Hello, and welcome to Sustainable Outlook, a podcast from global law firm K&L Gates, where we discuss the transactions, technologies, and trends in the sustainable economy. We hope you enjoy this discussion. Please reach out with suggested topics or guests, or questions about how we can work together to create a sustainable economy.
Hello, and welcome to Sustainable Outlook. I'm Elizabeth Krause, partner and co-lead of K&L Gates' Global Power Practice. I'm joined today by Suzan Tedrow, who is Director of Sustainability, Global Store Development at Starbucks Corporation. Suzan has spent many years in the sustainability sector and has worked on a number of issues from waste management to carbon compliance, and crucially, employee engagement. At Starbucks, she leads a number of initiatives, all of which ultimately touch Starbucks' network of more than 32,000 stores worldwide. Today, we'll discuss several of these programs, as well as many of the ways Starbucks approaches renewable energy, including an exciting new store-focused program.
Suzan, thanks so much for joining us today. You're at Starbucks and play a somewhat unique role. But I'm hoping that maybe you can give us just sort of a basic introduction to how Starbucks approaches sustainability, generally speaking, and how your role fits into that general approach.
Sure. Yeah. I think Starbucks has a long history in sustainability and focusing on environmental sustainability and social sustainability over the years as a company. More recently, in the last couple of years, we've been really focused on elevating our environmental sustainability, looking at sort of trends in the marketplace, concerns around climate change, and the impact to our core commodity product, coffee, along with trends with investors and others around what leadership looks like in environmental sustainability. So we actually began an exercise in 2019 to really look at how do we really build out and go from what was our CDP carbon reporting into a really robust, holistic value chain impact across carbon, water, and waste. And through that work of really identifying those value chain impacts, identifying our key areas of focus of how we would go forward with environmental sustainability. And through that, we kind of came up with 5 key areas of focus, really focus on coffee sustainability, focus on dairy sustainability, and also plant-based choices as part of that, sort of looking at those core agricultural commodities and things like that, a focus on reusables, a focus on waste, focus on eco-friendly operations. So through that, my areas of focus are really on the eco-friendly operations as it relates to our stores. And that's my area of focus, in addition to, as part of that umbrella, how we manage waste in our retail operations. Additionally, Starbucks, as we've kind of really come up with those areas of focus and this work that we've done to improve our understanding of our environmental impacts, we've named that our Planet Positive aspiration. As we've seen trends and changes kind of in society, we've also really evolved our thinking on our social agenda and how that needs to look. And we've really defined that now as our people positive agenda. I don't tend to work in that part of the business, but I think as we evolve that, there'll be more to come in our commitments in that space. But we know there's an intersection with the planet positive and the people positive, and we're starting to see that more in our work. And then additionally, of course, as a for-profit company, we're also focused on profit positivity. And really, those are the 3 legs of kind of that sustainability stool: people, planet, profit. And that's showing up at Starbucks in that planet positive, people positive, and profit positive model, and really trying to find the right intersection of how we can have the best impacts and still be kind of a profitable company. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's really interesting, too. I mean, that you're just facing head on the whole issue of trying to balance sustainability with profit. Obviously, that's a big deal for a company like Starbucks, which is in the retail space and has shareholders, publicly traded, right? And it's important to a lot of people. How did you come into this role? You're much more focused on operations. What's your background?
Yeah, so my background is that many, many years ago, I studied environmental science in college, and that was my area of focus. I thought I might rescue some spotted owls at the time. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, Seattle area. My career took a different trajectory, and I started working with corporates, mainly on environmental compliance in the early part of my career, and then really shifting towards more environmental management. So really working on areas of waste impact, water impact, air quality, things like that. I actually joined Continental Airlines and then stayed in their environmental department for 10 years, kind of following their merger with United Airlines. And then through the work over the years there, started working on programs like emissions trading in Europe and in California, our voluntary carbon emissions offset program that we had at the time, along with programs like biofuels commercialization and onboard recycling. So at the time, I was dealing somewhat with airport issues and things like that, but a lot of my work was on mobile sources. So after 10 years, I kind of felt like I had a really well-rounded time with the airlines. I was in Chicago, and I made the decision that I really wanted to come back to the Pacific Northwest where my family was based. And so I chose to take kind of a sabbatical in my career and actually had a role advertised at Starbucks to focus more on buildings and stores that came up. And so I applied and I joined Starbucks about 7.5 years ago and kind of steadily helped build the program that we have for kind of greener stores is the program name and brand that we talk about, really taking what we were doing in recycling and totally overhauling it, taking what we were doing and buying unbundled recs and working to really transform that program into a holistic suite of different mechanisms and measures of how we're integrating in renewables, and then really build out this third-party verification platform that we have for how we measure sustainability in stores. So it's been a great journey at Starbucks, but it really, the foundational work that I did earlier in my career is really helpful to understanding impacts and measurement and verification approach and emissions and all those things that continue to play out in the conversations I have today. People often think it was a really weird industry transition, airlines to Starbucks. But environmental management as a practical suite of skills and knowledge is applicable across multiple sectors in my eyes. And so I'm kind of a generalist, even though it doesn't seem like it sometimes when people talk to me, but I focus on a lot of different areas at Starbucks. And so that like broad background in sustainability and environment is useful.
Mm-hmm. You obviously focus on a lot of different things. I just want to take one piece about that you just mentioned and drill down on it a little bit. Sustainability in stores, recycling. Starbucks gets a lot of press about things like this, particularly when you're thinking about like Starbucks cups. Are they recyclable? Are they not? Does it matter? How do you approach sustainability in the stores? Are we just thinking about compostable straws? We're thinking about something else?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think there are different players in how you think about how sustainability comes together in the store for a company the size of Starbucks. And sitting in kind of the store development team, how we look at that sort of value chain process is there's sort of that real estate process, the design process, the construction process, and then moving it into sustainable operations or that facilities-based process. So my role is really to influence a lot of those elements at Starbucks, which tends to be sort of the building infrastructure and then pieces of the operation that are managed traditionally under that umbrella. So how do we think about more sustainable design choices as it relates to equipment that supports that sort of building format? So how we heat, how we cool, how we support, plumbing, things like that. And so we have a lot of standards we've developed for our new stores and also retrofits that we've done for our existing stores to drive impact and improvement. And all that work is really grounded in measurement. Part of what my team does is we do audits and we have continuous energy monitoring in our stores. And we're able to say, these are the most material areas of focus, and this is where we should go after things to drive down impact reductions. And we also measure them to support doing things like business cases in terms of piloting and testing and having everything be very numerical based. Certainly in a portfolio our size, we have to test and learn because you can't just go one and then go to 10,000. There's so many variations in our portfolio. So measurement and understanding impact at a company our size is really important and making sure we're focused on what's material. So we do monitoring for energy, for water, for waste to guide our decision-making and our approach. We then also focus on behavioral tools we look at programs like recycling. How do you improve customer awareness with signage, with approach, creating sufficient space, with making it easier? I mean, that's a journey we've been on for a long time. We've moved from a model where we had a can to a model where we had it integrated in our condiment cart and changed our signage to make it brighter and more visible and created iconography. we've also created new and enhanced tools and are on a journey to continue to do that for our partners. Similar concepts, making the space layout be easier for our partners, looking at ergonomics of how they move and studying how beverages and food are created in the packaging and where it sits in the back line, to really using technology to make it easier for partners to have all the data at their fingertips. Waste is a complicated space. It's hard, unfortunately, all the way to kind of then once you do the work that you can do to reduce energy, how do you then think about more sustainable choices of how you buy energy through renewable energy programming, and what can you do on site to generate electricity in a small box like us, to how might you leverage offsite structures through investing or long-term contracting. So that's kind of what's in our remit. There are other teams that are focused on kind of food and beverage offerings and like packaging design that we partner with in terms of looking at sustainability, in terms of measuring, in terms of supporting. But our work is really kind of that traditional building environment and support model for energy, water, and waste, whereas like our R&D department is developing the menu choices, new menu offerings in partnership with our category teams, or new packaging offerings, and partnering with us to understand like recycling access in the different cities. So it's definitely a multi-department effort to bring sustainability to life in the stores. There's no one team that's doing it, but we under store development kind of have the umbrella of the overarching sort of third-party measurement program with greener stores and certain key strategies that we've been really working on actually since 2008, when we came out with our original goals for energy, water, and waste.
Thanks for mentioning also the renewable energy, because I know that's an increasingly large part of your job and part of what you're focusing on in terms of creating greener stores. When we talk about renewable energy, right, there are a lot of different ways that could impact a large company like Starbucks. In principle, you could put some solar panels on your processing facilities, new roasting plants. You could do a lot of other things, though. You mentioned a few other options. How are you thinking about renewable energy? Where does it fit into your master plan? And what kinds of tools make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we think renewable energy is kind of a critical strategy for us, and Starbucks has been buying renewable energy since 2005. And so, when we look at our updated environmental footprint, obviously it's dwarfed by our supply chain and value chain impacts when we look at all of what goes into agriculture and being a food-based company and those impacts and waste, and trying to tackle that whole challenge of single-use packaging and really the transition to reusables. There's a lot of impacts in those spaces. But when earlier on, we were very much focused on scope 1 and 2, and we did a tremendous amount of work to begin buying renewables in form of unbundled RECs. And we really hit our goal in 2015 to have coverage for our retail stores, and then evolve coverage into our kind of supply chain operations, our roasting facilities. And that was our strategy, was really just buy it using instruments from existing sources. We were trying to make on-site work for us. It really was hard for us. It was not like the business case didn't pencil with our normal terms, and it was difficult to have it match with lease life and all these things. And we knew that because we're small in our retail operations, we weren't going to get enough coverage. So as we looked at where the industry was morphing in terms of leadership and where we wanted to be, which is staying on that leadership arc, along with actually looking at how much we were spending on unbundled RECs, we started to explore new strategies. The idea is if you're buying a REC from an existing source, it's just an ongoing cost if you make a commitment to 100%. So how might you look at different ways to approach the challenge of creating a mitigation for renewables? And what we were seeing is that utilities weren't really doing transformation on their own. And we were seeing more and more corporate buyers that were trying to intervene and create more demand to really drive that utility transformation. And so we signed on fairly early into renewable energy buyers principles, and then ultimately joined RE100. And we began exploring, VPPAs in about 2016, 2015. We're really trying to figure out if we could get comfortable with it. The industry was really transforming at that point in terms of what types of principles and contracts. People were taking some early bets, and some early bets had a lot of learnings, and we were a little nervous about what we were seeing. Talked with a lot of those early movers, and we're hearing some stories that we were like, whoa. And we actually ended up deciding to go into tax equity first. And that's a very complicated structure. but we felt like it was a place we would have maybe more secure pathway to have renewable energy coverage and understand the economics of that versus the VPPA at that time. But it really became a bridge to a much more diverse strategy. And now we do a whole suite of things. We do investments, we do long-term contracting in the form of virtual power purchase agreements, sleep power purchase agreements. We'll do green tariffs that may have a longer term. Because what we've found is that we can make it work from an economic standpoint and an environmental standpoint, and we can really drive greater impact. And so today, what we're really trying to do is bring new capacity, support new capacity coming onto the grid, and not just buy from existing capacity. And through that, I think where we're seeing more and more is we can have greater impact beyond Starbucks. We can have positive impact to our communities. We can help support the clean energy transition. And we can help signal to utilities that there's demand there as a corporate buyer. And done a lot of work in the US in terms of bringing transactions in terms of our size of business to bear. And we're really also focused on kind of each time we do something, we're trying to learn something new. We're trying to bring it to a new geography and not just try to keep repeating something, but really kind of every time sort of expand kind of what the opportunity is as the marketplace continues to change. And so you see that in our last VPPA that we signed on had a virtual storage agreement on it. And our last investment integrated community solar into New York State, which is a market we wanted to get access to, but has been a historically difficult market. So each time, I think as we grow the portfolio, we learn something new, and we advance. And I think it's a place where we're really excited to continue to see what's possible here in this space.
Well, it sounds like you've done it all.
No, there's more to be done, and we're excited. We think there's a lot. One thing that we have done more recently is we've just finished up an on-site pilot. Candidly, for a long time, we didn't think on-site would really work for us because we were just too small of a roof. And we just finished a pilot in California that was very successful. And what was great, honestly, is that we did all this great work offsite, but our customers didn't know. And we knew that we needed to bring it to the store to make it more tangible to people, to make it more tangible to our partners who really care about sustainability, our employees, we call our employees partners, and they really care and they want to see something. We actually ran an innovation challenge, and on-site solar was one of the ideas proposed by a store manager. That store manager partnered with our design and construction team and our treasury team and actually built a totally new model to replace construction materials with solar panels on our awnings. And through that work of not doing it in a traditional rooftop model, we were actually able to make it pencil. And we just finished out our 5 and are now actually 6 sites and are now expanding it in our sunny parts of the country. And that's really the last part of our strategy that we needed to figure out. But what we're seeing now is the needle just keeps moving. We're really excited about what's happening with storage. We're excited to see what's happening with renewable natural gas and when might that come down in terms of pricing and what's the opportunity there as we look at that, as we think about roasting or we think about our stores. Is it electrification in the stores or is it RNG? I think there's still so much runway in the space, the clean energy transition. And that's a place we're really excited to be part of.
Well, Suzanne, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for sharing where you all have been and also some of your goals. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainable Outlook. To listen to past episodes and receive notices for new episodes, subscribe by searching Hub Talks, that's HUB Talks, in your favorite podcast app. We hope you will tune in next time to learn more about the outlook of the burgeoning sustainable economy.